All right. Well, I just want to take a moment to thank you both for being here today and sharing your experiences with me and with all of those that are going to view this in the future. Joining me, I have Lauren and I have Rebecca, and you guys are way across the US from me. And it was interesting how we all kind of came together as this whole video is coming together for you. So I've been working with Lauren for, I looked up because I was curious. So I've been working with Lauren for a year and 4 months, and then with Rebecca, a dear friend of Lauren's, for 3 months. And we thought that it would be really interesting to share um, just thoughts because Rebecca has seen Lauren change, and that kind of inspired her to work with me. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. So thank you for being here, both of you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Lauren, I'm going to start with you. And because we have been working together for so long, tell me a little bit about what you were looking for in your life when we started working together.
Well, I specifically came to you, I had known you from the somatic stress release training, right? I trained as a somatic stress release practitioner, and you were in my training, and then you were a mentor in the program. And so I knew who you were, and I was familiar with you. And I had reached a point in my life where I was really struggling with some trauma from a traumatic birth and a traumatic hospital experience, and from 4 years prior, and was really had a lot of my own somatic skills and familiarity with trauma, and was at a point where there was a certain level I couldn't get to on my own. And I really needed to work with someone because it was impacting my relationship with myself, my relationship with my child. And so I reached out to you specifically just to unwind that particular event. And I thought we would like do the somatic trauma work around that event, and then that would kind of be it. And through the process of working with you over, I think it was like 6 sessions that we focused on that particular event, and we unpacked that and unwound that, and did that healing. And then in the process of that, I was like, oh my God, like this is the person that I have to work with. And I felt within myself that it needed to be for at least a year to there is just so much other stuff to unpack. There's so much other trauma. There are so many other relational patterns that I have been trapped by. And it was through the experience of that initial trauma work with you that I knew that I needed to do more work around, other things, other patterns. And was really just looking for a life really where I could stop having like repeated frustrating patterns in relationships, right? Feeling like I was getting really stuck in patterns with people who were not able to attune, not able to meet my needs. Was constantly kind of struggling for resources in my life. There were a lot of patterns that um were really upsetting, and were causing me to have a life that was really stressful, and just really feeling like constant crisis and constant trauma. And so I wanted to be able to heal a lot of that so that I could have better relationships, so that I could have more of a supportive life, if that makes sense.
Hmm. And one of the things that it was always inspiring to me as a practitioner is that every time we would meet each week, you'd come in with this list of, this is how it's changed. I feel so different. And I'm curious, is there anything, any one experience that you'd like to share that really impacted, that you really like, oh my gosh, we did this session and then this completely opened up something that I didn't expect or anything like
Yeah, I
that?
will say, like, and this might sound like minor, but I feel like your work, it has, like, how, if you watch like a drug commercial, it's like side effects include bloody nose and death, and like you're like, oh God, like I feel like your work has like the opposite. It's like you may have freedom in areas that you weren't even trying to work on, right? So I do have these like way, way, way more satisfying relationships, and like so much ease, and whatever, and all of that is what I was going for. But then also I remember I was flying somewhere in, I think it was February of this year. And I always am like freaked out I'm a very organized person, and yet I go to the airport and I'm like, where's the passport? Like, where is this? Oh my, I'm like freaking out in the security line. And my young daughter is like, Mom, take a deep breath. Like, and it's like this whole thing. And then I remember going to the airport and like I didn't double check my bag once. Like I was very clear that I was just totally at ease that I had everything I needed. And I was like, oh, what happened to my airport anxiety? Like I guess Shannon just cleared that. Like, you know, and so there's
Oh,
kind of these like and that's what I began to trust about our work, is that I would come in with something like very specific, and I would have this like laundry list of things like I want to work on this and this and this and this and this. And then I began to trust that like you and I would just find the root of something, and it would unwind not only that thing but also a whole bunch of other stuff. And I over time stopped being so like kind of checklist oriented,
mm,
because it's just such deep work that gets at the root of so many of these patterns.
mm. Thank you for sharing that. I had forgotten about that, but I remembered when you brought it in and were sharing that, and it was, yeah, it just feels so good just
Yeah,
knowing that we didn't work on it, but it's still, but because we were working on all these other things to calm and bring you into presence with yourself, and release a lot of the anxiety, that it just was a byproduct of all of that. And it came so easily
right.
and unexpectedly, which was a beautiful surprise.
Yeah.
Um, and Rebecca, I know you're just taking a sip of your water. You were watching Lauren unfold and change and shift
Yeah.
throughout this process. And I'm
Yeah.
curious what you noticed as you were watching your friend grow and
Yeah.
develop.
I mean, when I look back on it, I could tell that there was like a level of ease to her that hadn't been maybe present or noticeable to me before. And so there was like more of I think that's what I would call it, a calm and ease. I know, she shared a little bit about her like airport anxiety, and I had seen other areas that maybe she was a little bit more anxious as well at times. And like there was a different level of maybe trusting, of just being, and that was very magnetic for me. Even though I wasn't fully ready to kind of embrace that, like where she was at that time for myself, but I remember being like, wow, like there were noticeable changes like in her energy that I could tell. So that was something that I was beginning, and I was very wrapped up in kind of my own patterns at that time. So I wasn't necessarily ready to like do the work on myself, but noticing that in her, I mean, palpable, the energy kind of changing in her. Um,
And
so
you've known Lauren a long time.
long time. We've known each other for, my goodness, let me think.
It'll be
Uh,
17 years in January.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, a long time. So I've seen Lauren, we've been kind of in each other's lives through like major events, children being born, parents passing away, relationships ending, relationships beginning. I mean, we've definitely been, with each other through a lot.
And I think that says a lot when you've known somebody for so
Hmm.
long and then you see the change.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it was very inspiring to me and I think, it was, it like, eventually I wanted that in my own being. Like I like her, like it was like her energy. I was like, oh wow, I wanted something, when like what I was seeing happening in her. It gave me hope, that and when I was finally ready to reach out to you, it was because I had seen, kind of what her energy changing and what was happening in her life.
Mm. And Lauren, I know that you had mentioned it a few times to Rebecca through while we were working together before she finally reached out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah. Yeah.
She did, right. And again, I think I was so like wrapped up in my own unhealthy pattern that it was when I was finally reached that point where I was like in enough pain. It was like the summertime, and Lauren was like, I'm sending you Shannon's information, like just, like reach out to her. And I literally remember reaching out to you by email and putting my pattern in there and saying, I've got, like, I just pick the most, unhealthy, unavailable people to partner with or try to partner with. And I just want to break this pattern. It's causing me so much pain. And that was, yeah, I was ready in that moment, and I reached out. And Lauren, I think you had talked to me about um um like this particular person being possibly like a past life like connection. That's why it felt so powerful, and that's the way it felt to me, all consuming, all powerful. And um that was something that I was open to exploring. And if it meant like looking at and breaking patterns, then I was willing to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because not a lot of people know that that the work that I do encompasses so many different parts and pieces. I have so many different techniques and trainings, and just the way that I work involves intuitive work, energetic work, and as well as all of the physical through, release of trauma, somatic work, EFT tapping work, holistic movement work. So it all just kind of like flows under the umbrella of a session, and I never know where it's going to go. But it was interesting because that tonight, right before we started filming this, was the first time that I had heard that Lauren had said it feels like a past life connection, because when we originally met, I didn't know any of this. And that was as I tuned in and intuitively, I was like, oh, this is a past life connection. That's why this is so hard to walk away from this particular one. And so we began to clear that. And do you want to talk a little bit about how that went for you? Because I know it was um, there was so many like feelings of like wanting to be just like right there
Yeah.
with him, and
Yeah.
then it was like boom.
Yeah. 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 Oh my goodness. So in the beginning, I felt I was so raw, and yes, it was like I remember when it was maybe not even my first session, but I was trying to even like we were doing some type of almost like letting go, or like maybe a little bit of cord cutting. And I remember like I was unable, like I could feel it like in my body. I'm like, I cannot cut this cord with this person. I don't want to. I'm not ready. And you recognize that. And I think that's what actually allowed me to eventually be like, okay, just like letting go and releasing, because I never for one moment felt for me that I was being pushed to do something that I was not ready to do. Like it took time, and I recognized that. So like for me, it was I had to almost let go in like phases. And each time that I met with you, it got a little bit easier, a little bit less scary. And I talked about my abandonment and my need or my desire, like my want to be chosen and all of what it represented. And like I was able to see that it was about so much bigger. It was a bigger thing than even just this one person. It was like a pattern that I had repeated in my life throughout my life. Want this need to be chosen by somebody, by people who really actually aren't capable of choosing me. And it got back to me realizing like or understanding in my deep core that it's about me being able to actually like give that love and like choose myself. And like that was when all of everything lined up. That was where it was all of a sudden like it was like a release. It was a complete surrender that I've never experienced. Like I've never had anything and like that in my life, where it's just been a complete um just kind of letting go, and not getting caught in the like that abandonment feeling. I was able to acknowledge and but not get completely consumed by that. And so that
And
was like been the work over the last 3 months that I've done every single, week. And it's just been, the level of freedom. I'm so excited to continue, because the freedom that I already feel right now, from 3 months ago, and the freedom that I know I'm going to feel in 3 more months, even just by continuing to work. It's so, it's just incredibly moving, and inspiring. I mean, I feel like I'm, like, wow, this is so neat that I'm like giving myself this love and the opportunity.
I love that. And Lauren, what do you think when you see Rebecca's change?
I do. I see in you the same thing that you are saying you saw in me, which is just that more ease. Like there's just more ease. There's more spaciousness, right? There's less tension. Like I can feel that from you, you know. And that is really, in addition to like that you're reporting that you're seeing the things you wanted to see, right? Like not feeling like drawn to keep contacting this person even though you don't want to. It's like there's not that practical struggle is not there either. But it's more that overall energy of just more calmness, like you were saying about me,
Mhm.
I've definitely noticed that. And yeah, and it's only been like a short time. So
Mm.
Mhm.
And I want to bring up that it in this case for Rebecca, it was a past life connection that's super strong. But it also could have been, depending on it might have been a different scenario. Because I want to bring in that with Lauren, we cleared a lot of intergenerational trauma that's gone back through the line. And that was a major component to a lot of what our work has been around. Um, and I think that though it is becoming more commonplace to talk about that, I think it's nice to bring up and say that, hey, it really is possible that we really do carry a lot of our family angst and our family trauma and the layers of it that just live in us. And it makes it heavy. It makes it hard for us to see life with a clear lens. We make a lot of different choices. Um, yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Lauren?
yeah, I mean, I feel like that there was, yeah, a lot of intergenerational stuff. And then there was also some past life stuff. And I think that for me, that's been the biggest thing about our work together is that there was this kind of whole world of like baggage that wasn't mine that
Mhm.
like I had never had access to unpacking of any of that before I worked with you. And I wasn't, and I remember when you first brought it up, you were like, I don't want to step on any, like, I don't know what your religious beliefs are. I don't want to like step on any toes. Like I definitely didn't come in looking for that. And I've actually had, it feels relevant to say for anybody who might have had like negative spiritual experiences. I've definitely had some of those, right? With folks who kind of are like, unskilled at energy work or kind of working based on like guesses or notions or, so I was a little bit like, thanks, but like I'm gonna take your past life suggestion with a grain of salt. Like we don't know if past lives are real. Um, and then like throughout the course of work together, I'm like, past lives are real, people, they are real. Like, oh my God, like, like I just feel like it's been that for me has been a really big
Mhm.
transformation. And I feel like, yeah, so for anybody who's like listening to this and is maybe like a little bit doubtful, like I also was a little bit doubtful and um have found that to be really that was the key to me being able to release a lot of what I was carrying around with me that was holding me back. Because what I had been doing was a lot of like, traditional therapeutic work, which is nothing wrong with like psychotherapy, but a lot of it you're like looking for the story and you're looking for the narrative and you're kind of digging around looking for the root of things in your own lifetime. And it just isn't always in your own lifetime. It can be a couple of generations back that it's just a pattern that people are passing down and a way of orienting to the world, And so um to be able to not have to have a lot of conversations about that, but to just be able to do, to use the various modalities that you use to be able to kind of unwind and clear some of that out and just be able to approach life with a, like you said, a clear lens has been
Mhm.
amazing. And also just a much lighter weight for me. It has also helped me heal from some um just feeling like why can't I do anything right? Like what's wrong with me, right? Like what, it wasn't necessarily me. And then some kind of unhealthy spiritual beliefs that I had been exposed to, like the, ideas that I'm, somehow I'm creating all of this. And it's like, well, okay, but also like if that's based on intergenerational stuff or past life stuff, I'm not necessarily creating it. There's like kind of other influences, right, that aren't conscious to me. And so I'm saying all this to say that in addition to being free from those patterns, I'm also free from a lot of just shame and confusion about what is going on. Is it me? You know, there's been tremendous freedom and healing there as well. And so, yeah,
Mm.
that's,
Thank you for bringing that up because
Mhm.
that is something that I hadn't even thought to talk about tonight. But you so beautifully reminded us that sometimes we can go in circles looking for the reason why we are the way we are, and sometimes it's just not us, and we just came in that way, and it doesn't and it can be released. It can we can change it. Um, uh, this is a side note, but as you were talking, it suddenly kind of brought up something for me. I was thinking about how um, much of the work that I do is, I mean, it's in the body. So the difference between going to a psychotherapist or working with somebody like myself is that I don't need the story. And I'm just tuning into the body, and we're going to be listening to what the body wants to do, the emotions that the body might have stuck in there. And so because of that, it can make moving trauma and experiences that we don't necessarily want to revisit and talk about over and over, we can go about it without having to revisit. And so I'm curious because I know Rebecca, no, actually, I'm sorry, I was going to say, Rebecca, you haven't experienced that with me yet. But Lauren, you have experienced like even some of the hospital trauma stuff. I know that that was highly activating for you at the time. But would you say that the tools and techniques that I brought in were felt gentle and safe, or how would you phrase some of
yeah,
that?
I would say that it was absolutely gentle and safe, and mainly the reason, I mean, first of all, you have, all of the appropriate training. Um, but it was also gentle and safe because, the way that we did it was we stretched it out. So like we didn't just plunge into like, tell me what happened. It was like minute by minute. I mean, it took us 6 sessions, 6 90-minute sessions to review the whole, I think it was 4 days, right? I was in the hospital for 4 days. And so we went like moment by moment, like, okay, like what happened next? Pause it here. Like, and we would unpack like we would unpack like a nurse's glance. You know what I mean? Like it was very like we were very and so there was a lot of, in saying that, I mean to say there was a lot of room to stop if something got overwhelming, right? And I think that in and of itself is very healing with trauma, because trauma is like too much, too fast, too soon, right? And so when you are able to slow it way down and just focus on like a freeze frame of a moment, and there was plenty of space to, to be like, this is too much. And it was never too much. I was ready to face that and to clear it. But if it had been, there was certainly room for us to to pause or to talk more about something, you know. Um,
Yes. Hmm.
so I think that was really, really safe as well. So
Thank you for sharing that. So let me think. I'm curious if was there ever a moment for either of you that surprised you in any way, whether that was easier than I thought that would be, or it just turned out to be different. You don't have to have an answer. I just was curious because I feel like I'm surprised often in a session because I'm going with the flow. I'm tuned into, I'm getting downloads. I am in touch with your guides, guardians, and angels, and my own. And so sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. So I'm curious if there was a moment where you're like, I did not see that coming.
for me, I don't think there was anything that I didn't see coming. I think there was a I do remember early on there was something oh, I've had like a kind of a lifelong struggle, not so much with relationships, but with well, I mean, yes, with relationships, but also with resources, right? With work, with finances has been a kind of an ongoing issue for me. And I remember that someone else that I had worked with a couple of years ago had said something along the lines of like, right, it was one of those kind of unhelpful, like fatalistic things like, oh, well, there's probably a lot of layers and like, oh, I don't even know. Like, and I was kind of left with this like, oh my God, this is like this giant unsolvable problem, right? Um, this person was insistent that I was somehow creating it with my energy, but that it was very mysterious and you know, we didn't, how could it possibly be solved? And so how unhelpful is that to hear, right? And so I remember bringing that to you and I'm like, Shannon, I've been told that this is so multi-layered. And you were like, I think we can clear that like right now. And I was like, but how? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? And you were like, if it's just like an energetic loop, we can do some tapping and we can clear it. And I remember being like, all right, I'm along for the ride. Sure. Like, you know, and it was like, it really did like change quickly, right? And so that for me was the most surprising thing, was that things that I had thought of as like intractable lifelong things that would like, you know, forever be a crisis or just be really like for forever issues were oftentimes solvable within the context of one session, you know? um and that was really like, oh wow, I had no idea, you know. um
Yeah, it's true, really. So much
Mhm,
can be solved in one session. Like
mhm,
we talked about how we took 6 days to clear, or I mean, 6 sessions to clear those 4 days because they were intense and they
mhm,
were deeply rooted in trauma. And so we are going to slow way down. But some of this other stuff, it's just boom, 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 done.
mhm,
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one thing I would add that I've noticed, so I've been able, I think when you and I have done tapping, like a noticeable shift. And I think one of the things that you'll have me do, you'll say, wow, I can like everything's kind of settling. And then like when I would think about how I, maybe was feeling when I came in as to how then I'm feeling as I'm leaving, some of that is just, it really is like I could feel my own energy is shifting. There is space, there is more, whether maybe there was a tightness or a almost like a kind of being yeah, closed off a little bit. It's open. There's an actual opening that I'm able to experience. And that to me, I think in the beginning, and like Lauren, I've done tapping before with other people and I haven't experienced it in that way. So I haven't been able like to actually feel that like shifting, that opening. And so that um is something that, I really has been really impactful on me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I didn't,
Mhm.
yeah, that's really great to hear. Um, I'm curious why you guys think that this work, or who is this work for? Is it for anybody? Do you think it's specific to people? Like, who should do this work?
I think it's for anybody who has those kinds of issues where it's like, this is an issue, like this, I can't seem to not have this thing be an issue, right? Whether it's like unavailable people, or like for myself it was like finances and achievement and but like those sort of lifelong issues that you grapple with, right? Where it's like, why can't I make progress on this? Like, I've done the therapy, I've got like, I've read the self-help books, like what's going on, right? I feel like that is the juncture that I was at in, beyond the birth trauma. I mean, or anybody who has trauma, right? Anybody who's like,
Mhm.
I have legit trauma and I want to unpack this. I had a traumatic event and I need to move past it. Right. I would say those are kind of the two things where I would top recommend.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. I think, yeah, I think the work is really for anybody. And yeah, I mean, when I look back at even my own patterns and relationships, I mean, I, for the first time in 20 something years, I think probably over a little bit over 20 years, I'm on my own for the first time. I have literally put myself with people for 20 years and really thought, I mean, I remember telling Lauren, and you pointed this out to me that I was said, like, I don't think I'm not able to be alone. I actually do not think I can be on my own. And to be able today to be on my own and that was a huge pattern for me that I was in. I mean, I would be in I would end something, I would, or have somebody already lined up and then end, and that was how I was living my life in that with that belief that I wasn't okay if I was on my own. And so that was something that I think if you have patterns like that, and maybe, or similar patterns, that yes, the work really can be for anybody, because to be able to have freedom from that is just, it's incredible. It's a whole different way of living and being. And yeah, I would say it's really, really for anybody.
Mm, I love that. And you said my favorite word. And I just want to respond to that, which is somebody once asked me, what does the work that you do offer to people? And I literally, it's in one word, it's just freedom. It
Hmm.
offers freedom.
Hmm. That is it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think. I mean, I can say for myself what I have experienced in 3 short months of working with you. I have a level of freedom that I have not had
Mhm.
in my life. And that is
Mm.
something, and and I mean that, like, I'm so, like, excited to keep on working and to keep on experiencing, deeper freedom or more freedom, however you want to word it. But like the freedom that I have from a pattern that I never thought I would be able to break free of. And to be, it's just, yeah, freedom. That's what, when I think about your work, that is the word that comes to mind, freedom.
Yeah. I
Mm.
think of freedom, and then I also kind of think of, and I don't know if you've ever used this word in context with your work, but I also think of power a little bit, because like
Mm.
I had this experience of like trying to create, right, like I referenced a little while ago, like the idea of creating your own reality, right? And I would be like, well, I'm trying to create my own reality, like disasters keep happening, like what is going on, and like it wasn't, it was true, I was trying my best, right? And it's just that there was so much like intergenerational stuff and past life stuff that was like coming up and just being constantly present, right? And so to have that freedom from that, now I do experience it differently, where when I say like I'm going to do this thing or I'm going to create this result, it's actually able to happen now, like because like all of those chains have been broken. And so that is, it's, I think that's like meant to be an empowering idea, and now it is, because it's I'm free from those other influences, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love that because that's so true because it felt like when we first started working together, your energy was like you were literally dragging like all of this heavy baggage behind you. And it's so different now when we tune in and come in together in session. So much momentum and lightness there. Well, I just want to thank both of you for being willing to share your stories and just to be here with me and for your trust in each of our sessions. I love to work with both of you, and I appreciate you both so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Work and you.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Likewise. Yeah.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I will see you both soon.
Okay. You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.